This phone has an 120Hz OLED screen and an underscreen fingerprint reader at only $170. It's the NUU A25, and beyond those headlining specs, it's got a sleek plastic build, a great screen-to-body ratio, and the speedy Helio G99 chip plus 6 gigs of RAM. I stopped making budget phone videos more than a year ago since things seem to be leveling off, but this NUU A25 is a great way to come back to things since it's a genuinely exciting, super affordable phone. Let's get into things by talking about the performance. The A25 has the Helio G99 chip paired with 6 gigs of RAM. The G99 is an entry-level to mid-range chip that first off provides smooth everyday performance and does better than you'd think at filling out the 120Hz refresh rate. That 120Hz actually makes things feel pretty snappy on the surface level to an extent that made me appreciate how far budget phones have come. Compared to 60Hz phones around this price I tested out in previous years, this guy feels much more responsive. And beyond that, the story of performance is predictable but acceptable. There's a few hiccups and glitches that'll become more frequent when you jump out of lighter day-to-day tasks, gaming is going to be capped at not too demanding titles, and future-proofing is not really existent as it's just not what we're here for. But even though those may seem like downsides, and I guess technically they are, they come from the phone being so cheap, and at this price, performance is definitely good. Let's move on to the design. Here there unfortunately is a step back from budget phones I previously reviewed, as the phone is entirely made of plastic. No metal sides, no glass back, just plastic. At the same time, I can kind of appreciate the no-nonsense build here, because the Umidigi phones I was just referencing with those shimmery glass backs definitely couldn't maintain the glamour on the inside. Also, the A25 has a sleek silhouette that's thin and light with a great screen-to-body ratio. The hole-punch camera cutout is appreciated too. Now let's talk the screen that surrounds that. It's 120Hz OLED with a 1080p plus resolution and a max brightness that I eyeball to be around the same as the Pixel 6. But yeah, you don't come across specs this good at this price very often, and I very much appreciate having them in an ultra-budget phone. I already talked about the benefits of 120Hz, but OLED carries a lot of weight with making things look good too. The screen is very colorful with great contrast. I will say the tuning of the screen isn't perfect, and regardless of whether you're in normal or vivid mode, it is too saturated, but you can't complain too much when you're getting these display specs at this price. Before I talk cameras, let's quickly tick the boxes of some miscellaneous specs. This phone runs Android 13, which was the latest version out when I received the phone, so that's great to see. It's also a very close to stock version of Android, which is appreciated. Obligatory budget phone company disclaimer though, don't hang your hat on too many software updates after what this phone ships with. The fingerprint reader, beyond being great to have, is pretty fast and just about as good as you'd expect in a mid-range phone. Hopefully you can get a feel for the speed through the footage I'm showing. This phone has a 5000 mAh battery, so a good capacity, but battery life these days has more to do with optimization than capacity, and from my experience this has been about par for the course, yielding good battery life. Last but not least, for miscellaneous specs, this phone has 128GB of storage and micro SD card expansion. So that leaves the cameras, where the A25 has a 50MP main camera and 2MP macro lens on the back and an 8MP front camera without autofocus. This is the flip side of the 120Hz OLED screen, where new phones that are this cheap haven't remotely caught up to today's flagships or even flagships going back several years. So if you jumped on eBay, you could get something like a Pixel 6 used that have drastically better cameras for photos and videos than this. But I'd assume you know that if you're on the market for a new in age and condition phone around this price. In that category of camera performance, you get about what you'd expect. That's workable photos and videos that are always a bit deep-fried and exponentially more so in low light. But again, this is unlike the day-to-day performance, the quality of the screen, or the general footprint and screen-to-body ratio, which are all categories where this phone approaches flagship level. Cameras are just a category where budget phones across the board don't come close to flagships. But despite that, and rounding things out, for people looking for a budget phone under $200, the NUU A25 is legitimately a great option, and it was absolutely worth coming out of budget phone hibernation for me to check this guy out. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more quality tech videos, and I'll see you later.